What is up, UFO peeps? We are live. I want to talk about some of the latest news. Uh, Someone posted this. When you find out UFOs are just drones. Yep, that's pretty much the reaction out there. Um, the other one is Jay Weidner, news from Jay Weidner. Corey Goode admits in his court case that all his claims, which most of us knew were BS, were channeled, and that he never did the bull crap secret program stuff that he claimed. He has terrorized his critics in frivolous yet financially damaging lawsuits. He essentially was a whirlwind of nonsense believed by way too many people in the UFO community. For those of you who don't know, he was on like Corey Goode, and Corey Goode was this guy that was on Gaia TV with David Wilcox and was promoted really big and a couple of years back. And a couple of people went after him, started exposing him and saying that he wasn't, had no evidence and, was a liar. And he went after them in lawsuits, including this guy on his channel, Reality Check, Jay Weidner. I'm going to let you guys, we're going to listen to Jay real quick and hear it from him. But first, we're going to do a shout out to the live audience. What's up? I want the truth about Justice Beaver too. What the heck is that? Cambion is a fan of Good. I don't think he is. He's done a lot of stuff on him. Salute. Hello, alien scientist peoples. Flummer Lane. What's up? President Zaddy. Scott Blight. Hey, fun peeps. I'm happy that yo dudes are here. Channeled, yeah. So it came to him in a dream. He has no evidence for it. It basically just came to him somehow. So let's see this. We're gonna listen to Jay Weidner himself tell us.
Hey everybody, Jay Weidner here, Reality Check. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. I just got a short video here today. It is 100% correct that Corey Goode, who is suing me for $5 million, has said in court under oath at his deposition with his other business partners, a court case, that the entire secret space programming, my labs, abductions, the entire narrative that he was putting forth was channeled. And he never went to outer space, and he's never been anywhere, and it was all channeled in his living room. And so I feel somewhat vindicated because I came out 2.5 years ago and said that I didn't believe his story, and I never really believed his story, to be honest with you. But I had a job to do, so I did it. But anyway, I just thought you guys should all know that it is absolutely 100% certain that none of the events that Corey entailed in his 2 movies or the books that have been written about him or his series on Gaia, Cosmic Disclosure, the conferences where he spoke about his experiences, none of that was real. None of it was real at all. It was all just channels. He was never in a secret space program. And the real question becomes, okay, so maybe he didn't realize that it was channeled. But when he did realize it was channeled, don't you think it would have been appropriate at that point to drop the lawsuits against Gaia and me and Cliff High? Because all we did, Cliff High and me and C.W. Chanter, was say we didn't believe him. That was the extent of we don't have any kind of conspiracy among us. We don't talk. Occasionally Cliff High and I will write an email to each other, but it's not about Corey. It's about something else. So there is no conspiracy. The case should have been dropped. If he was an ethical person, he would have dropped the case because he realized that it was all channeled, or it was just channeled from the beginning, or it was all BS. We don't know at this stage. It's just playing CYA with the courts, and I don't think the courts are going to look very happy at somebody claiming that something was real for 7 years and then finally saying, oh no, it was all channeled and none of it was real. Anyway, it's kind of a part of the way this world is these days. And I'm sure his fans are going to be very upset, as they should be. Anyway, I'm Jay Weidner. This is Reality Check, and I just wanted to give you guys an update. Thanks for watching. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, come on, man. We obviously knew that was junk. Now, someone else in the live chat asked about this, and I wasn't originally have it in the schedule, but you know what? I am going to bring it up and mention it. I did watch Dark Journalist the other night. I've been watching a lot of his stuff lately, the last couple of episodes, and John Warner, the fourth, is always an interesting guest, and he had him on last night. I liked a lot of the stuff that he had to say, you know, all throughout this. You know, he got some asked some technical questions about, you know, technical capabilities and technologies and stuff. And that's where you can tell he chokes up and doesn't have a fluid knowledge of the subject and is just trying to, you know, fill in holes where he can to. But there's a couple things that he talks about that I was just really like taken aback with. For example, the part about the, you know, where I think it was about an hour in or so, where he talks about the U.S. Navy teleporting ships and you know, lost time with sailors and how they implant memories into the sailors to make them think that they yeah, we went around Cape Horn, we remember this stuff. Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of stuff in there. He's not really knowledgeable about that stuff. And then, of course, you know, his argument that, you know, it's his fallaciously unsound argument that because Chris Mellon was asked about Bob Lazar, and Bob Lazar, you know, Chris Mellon, of course, replied that you know, he didn't believe Bob Lazar was legit or telling the truth about this, you know, and of course, he says in the interview with Dark Journalist, John Warner says that, oh well, you know, I tend to believe Bob Lazar is telling the truth, and I think that vindicates that Bob Lazar was telling the truth. If a guy like Chris Mellon says that he's not telling the truth, so that's his bearer or marker of the truth, not the fact that, you know, Bob Lazar has been caught in numerous, you know, fabrications from his education credentials to, you know, his actual timeline and the timeline version of events of his actual career, you know, saying that, you know, they deleted all his files and all his records. And in fact, researchers were later able to track down a lot of records on him. And, you know, I think that Chris Mellon, you know, said that he didn't believe Bob Lazar because Bob Lazar has been thoroughly debunked within the community, and the skeptics and real researchers alike. He's been completely debunked. So, you know, of course, if Mellon wanted to maintain credibility, he's going to, of course, maintain the position that he, you know, is going to, you know, not going to go along with a known fraud like Bob Lazar. So I just don't agree with John Warner's assessment that, oh, Bob Lazar must be telling the truth because Mellon said he's, you know, doesn't believe him. That's just not the good, you know, again, it's like channeling, right? What are you saying? You're saying that, well, I'm just going to believe the opposite of what this guy believes because, you know, that's my burden of truth, you know. Not evidence and stuff. And yes, theory of everything with Kurt Jamungle. We're going to be covering this next. So this was actually the next thing we were going to talk about. Oh yeah, this dude, he's got a pretty cool setup. But yeah, interesting guy. Oh, Kurt was here. Let me just get in here. He's got great podcast, guys. Kurt, man, it'd be awesome to get him to jump on with us. Kurt, if you, I'm going to send you the StreamYard link if you can jump in with us and talk about that. We're going to talk about the interview that you did with Stephen Greer next. There you are. I'm just going to send it to you on Twitter if you want to join, if you're still watching. it would be great to have your input on the next subject, which we're going to get to, which was your interview with Stephen Greer, which I hope you don't mind that I'm going to play a brief part of it, which is the relevant part here, which is the physics
of one of these devices, and you have a team of 12 investors and physicists and electromagnetic engineers, it'd be so easy to rub you out and you'd vanish, and who the hell would ever know about it? This is what happened to the team that got the Stan Meyer archive, because Stan Meyer not only had a car that was running on water, it was actually running on 0 point. We can get to that in a moment if you want to hear the physics of it. And he also had a device that had a national security order on it that we knew about. I have photographs of it. And it was like a toroid. And it was putting out enormous amounts of energy, way more than you had to supply to it, because it was also accessing this very high voltage electromagnetic charge system that taps into and creates sort of a space-time cavitation from the 0 point. And this is what they're doing. So that ended up being...
Can you talk more about the physics too? You said you could talk about the physics?
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's if you're talking to a general audience, no one's going to care about Poynting vectors and what Maxwell equations were altered and all that stuff. But what
this is funny because this is the point. I don't think Greer realized that, like, he's on a channel with people that exactly know that could write Maxwell's equations in integral and differential form, can play around with them with divergence gradients, curls, and all the relevant mathematics, and that we want to get as technical and as detailed as possible, and that he's like, oh, well, for the layman. No, we're not talking about physics for the layman. We want you to lay it down, bro. Like, this is the greatest part, because I think it's quite revealing. I've watched it a couple times now.
I'm trying to get to is that we were trying to get it, but they had a big funder that outbid us for the Stan Meyer warehouse, including this toroid. And that was the real action, by the way, not the car. Well, a couple years later, it had a huge amount of funding. It was up in Michigan. I finally get a call from Lord somebody, I won't say his name, in the British Isles, who had been the funder. And he was in a panic. He says, look, they're on the run for their lives. They've got all this stuff operational. Now, remember, the day that it slipped into that world where they were going to try to monetize it secretively, I said, these are all dead men walking. I said, the way they're doing this is guaranteed to fail. It is guaranteed to fail. But now finally, this Lord so-and-so calls me up. He got my number somehow. And he's in a panic. And I'm here in Washington. I said, let me write a strategic overview of what needs to happen within 24 to 48 hours. Because they were saying, oh, we're going to go to an eco-friendly country. I said, you'd have to go to an eco-friendly star system. There's nowhere on this planet where the henchmen who want to keep this secret won't find you. It's just not going to happen. They don't recognize any geopolitical country boundaries for their operations tactically. So I said, look, you do this. So it was exactly what we're talking about. You open source it immediately. You then hand off all that information to us, and I will get, a twin.
All right, I don't want to get into the whole thing because I've already watched it, and I want people to go back and watch this. A couple things, because there's a couple of the asserted physics that he kind of briefly mentions and talks about, although he doesn't know the technical terms to really properly refer to these things so that people can go and look them up. And so I put together a little bit of a presentation of those things here. Number one is the Casimir effect with the plates that are next to each other and the physics of the Casimir effect. And the idea of this is that the flatter that you can make the plates and the closer that you can get them to touch without actually touching. And if you can hold them there, and you'll get this force that comes from the plates. And theoretically, maybe you could use that force for pushing stuff. And we'll get more into that and some of the physics of maybe some free energy stuff that might have some legitimacy to it. And some of the stuff he talked about with these, what he was talking about with these, with Ken Shoulder's research. I mentioned all the scientists that he mentions and we've talked about a lot of their research on this channel. Ken Shoulders was the guy who he talked about what frequency was one of the questions that Kurt asks him at one point is what's the frequency, Steve? And I believe we nailed down the frequency on this, and it's in the terahertz range, in this range of the terahertz gap, which is an interesting place in the electromagnetic spectrum. It's kind of this range that resonates with the atomic structure of atoms, or the electron resonance cloud. And it's really difficult, therefore, to make electronics inside the terahertz electronics within that terahertz gap, because you're basically on the frequency of the electron itself, and it's how it interacts with the atomic structure. So it's very hard to attenuate or see those frequencies because they're muffled out and by the background radiation of just the noise of space itself. And there's a theory that the actual background space-time continuum itself is a woven fabric created from light surrounding this point in the electromagnetic spectrum. And that if we wanted to theoretically use pumped light radiation to warp space-time in a warp drive, we would ideally use radiation within the terahertz range. And don't need to necessarily. So one way to reach these really high energy limits, like the Schwinger limit, is to limit the volume volumetrically of the space, which you get through supercavitation, which is when you collapse a gas, like with PV equals nRT, ideal gas law. What happens when the limit as V goes to 0 is the temperature goes sky high and can reach hundreds of millions of degrees for a brief instant, and that can boil water. It can cause these supercavitations, which can actually they're hot enough to melt metal, and they've caused melting of metal. And in some cases, people have reported that some of these supercavitation experiments actually produce quantum entanglement and fusion, sometimes fusion in some cases, that thermonuclear fusion, because you're again getting that temperature gradient up really, really high for a brief moment of time in a flash. And so we talked about some of those technologies with supercavitation, but again, the EVOs and stuff that he doesn't mention. The other frequency is maybe the Schumann resonance that's been mentioned by a lot of the scientists that Greer has spoken to and is in his circles. And it's this natural frequency of the Earth, that the Earth just has this natural resonant frequency to it in the atmosphere. And you can watch an animation of this. This is how with the Schumann resonance. It's just this Earth resonance, and of course, anyways, telluric currents are another one of these things that he mentions, these currents that are in the Earth, and they're different. The only thing that would be electronically different in different places on the Earth geographically, depending on where you are, would be these telluric currents, which are Earth currents, which Tesla knew about, wrote about, and did a lot of experiments with. So so the idea that space-time is, so this is in Bernard Haish's So if you look up Bernard Haish's theories on 0 point and inertia, he kind of goes into a lot of the stuff on his, here's his CV. I'll try to post this in the, so you can get some of his papers on this. He did a lot of research for Lockheed Martin, theoretical research on this for Lockheed Martin. And, but the one who, this whole idea is also Stephen Wolfram wrote about it in his paper, What is Space Time? So, Wolfram. Yeah, what is space time really? And he hasn't connected it to the whole terahertz, the whole idea that's where the terahertz is. But terahertz gap is like right in the middle of the electromagnetic spectrum, and it's right at a point which resonates with the material framework of matter, and it would be an ideal basis point. I don't know if there's many papers written about why this could be, but this is sort of an idea that we've thrown around on this channel and talked about. It might be a good place for a young mathematician or theoretical physicist to, to base some research out of it, and that would be great for something for your channel. So again, this is a now. Let's talk. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. So the Hutchison effect, again, there could be some effects going on with EVOs. I know that there's a number of things that Hutchison faked over the years. He faked a couple of videos where he was pretending to get lift on this flying saucer toy that he was working with in his lab, and it was later revealed that he's using a string to manipulate it. And there's a lot of speculation that his early anti-gravity videos were filmed by, fixing a camera inside of a box and dropping it down an elevator shaft, so that, the objects appear to get weightless in the reference frame. And there might be a lot of more evidence of video fakery than there is of actual effects, anti-gravity effects in a lot of his stuff. So I don't know. I'm careful about Hutchison because of that, and he's damaged his reputation severely by that content. But there is something to do with these exotic vacuum objects, or EVOs, and the Pons-Fleischmann experiment and this cold fusion phenomena. I think there's more to be told there. But yeah, Ken Shoulders is the guy that came up with this idea of the EVOs. And he did an interview with John Hutchison, kind of based some of his stuff off of some of John's work, because John was doing some interesting work, and there's rumors that it got clouded in with some of this other stuff to sort of obscure it. Too. So I don't know. It's an interesting story nonetheless. John's an interesting guy, but it's just not really. Again, kudos to you for pointing out the issues with the voltages. So yeah, 15,000 volts is where electricity peaks out, and you learn that from Electro Boom, who did some of these electronics videos. The best one is where he builds a Marx generator, and he shows that the thing starts shorting out at these points because it actually, once you get up above a certain voltage, it actually ionizes the air and can create a discharge. It discharges early, so the voltage won't build up beyond a certain point. You have to insulate all the leads on your Marx generator so that you're eliminating that source of ion leakage, which actually will ionize the air once it reaches a certain voltage. And there's some problems with building things that go up to 500,000 volts or 1,000,000 volts. And I'm glad you warned people against doing that, because the basis that he used for a lot of these videos actually came from one of our technicians, Jeremiah Pop, who built the first magic wand device that he used to copy, and then did for his giant Marx generator video, which is cool because he got a ton of views on that stuff. So yeah, you gotta get Eric Dollard would be good. I don't know that he would do that. Maybe he would. You could get Eric Dollard to go on TOE, but he's an expert on the Tesla technology, all that telluric currents, and the Schumann resonance, and some of those ideas about and Wardenclyffe, and wireless power transmission, and a bunch of other related technologies. So Eric Dollard would be a great interview for you to get on, Kurt, if you haven't heard of him. But what else did I want to mention really quick? So, oh yeah, this guy right here, unblocking 0-point energy. I linked this in the description. This is Garrett Modell, and he's got a channel on here. He's from the University of Colorado Boulder, and he's got a great video here on unlocking 0-point energy. It's a great background introduction to the 0 point and some of these ideas that, Greer kind of throws this stuff around from, a country doctor who's a layman in physics. So he's heard bits and pieces of this stuff, but he hasn't really, dove in like hardcore for the last, many years, like some of the people on this channel have, which is great for everyone sharing information. Yeah, this is awesome. We have Kurt in the chat, man. That's it. Thank you for being here. And sorry I wasn't more available to moderate for your interview. I was watching my kids. Yeah, I bet, dude. You got some. You're really doing it, man. You're really doing great. So yeah, people want to check out Garrett Modell and this video that I linked in the description. This will give you an awesome idea. This quantum vacuum 0-point energy radiation that's just kind of sitting around in the vacuum. This cold, dark energy that just kind of is everywhere. They discovered it first in the late 1960s with Bell Labs, and 68, I believe it was. And oh, great. I'll drink to that, man. Thank you, Connor. Oh, hey, man, is that Connor that I met out in California? No, wait, you're from Canada. Maybe you came down from Vancouver, but I did meet a Connor out in the last conference I was at. So thank you for that, and thank you for all the other super chats and everything. Yeah, I didn't plan this one, man, ahead of time. I wasn't planning to go live, and I just got a whole bunch of stuff, and I wanted to talk about it all at once. I wish I planned these better, because then I could get a lot more organized on this stuff. But he goes over Casimir cavities, talks about the physics of extraction, the fast capture, metal insulator, metal barrier, and that might explain some of the physics of those terahertz metamaterials that were displayed by others in the community as being from, Roswell. This metal insulator, metal cavities, and fast tunneling, these maybe methods to produce free energy, limitless power. And this is very interesting ideas that he's come out with, and he's again gotten some Nobel Prize winning people to take note of it, and just say that they're going to bet just statistically that he's wrong, because the law of thermodynamics has been so inviolable that it really hasn't. He's just not betting against it, but he said of all the theories that and people that have ever claimed ideas for extracting energy from the 0 point, his seems to be the most plausible. And I would check out his work if you're into, you know, the 0 point energy. You know, some of the other scientists that he mentions are, you know, Moray King. Again, Moray King is I met Moray King. He was out at Tesla Tech in Albuquerque again this year, as well as last, and he's been a long time author on the idea and the concept behind this, and, you know, sort of keeping the idea alive. But he's he again, he's not a physicist, and is not a I thought he was a doctor, but he's I don't think he said he's not a doctor, because he was after me and I introduced him as Dr. Moray B. King, and he said, I'm not a doctor. So anyways, I just remember that from his speech. But anyways, he's not. Some of the other guys that Greer mentions, let me see, who else does he mention? Oh, the Japanese scientist. I'm not sure who that was, and we're trying to figure out who that might have been. One theory was it was Masaru Emoto, who's been largely discredited. I know a lot of people believe in some of the ideas put forth in his research, and, you know, there's some theories that, you know, he was that you know, they weren't ready for entanglement, and entanglement's place in crystal's growth, and some of these other ideas. So, but anyways, he there's, if you look up, there's a big controversy over his work. And he's essentially says that he's a businessman who's not a doctor, and that he, you know, was a fraud who perpetrated this idea that human consciousness could affect the molecular structure of water, like that if you swore at the water as it was freezing, it would make screwed up, you know, crystals, and if you told it was beautiful while it was freezing, it would make beautiful crystals. And of course, I remember running this experiment when I first heard about this back in, you know, mid 2010s, or, you know, 2010. I forget when it was. It was like 10 years ago or something. And I tried it, and I didn't get convincing results. It's not a repeatable experiment. No, I tried it myself, and was not able to get the same results as him. And I encourage you, this is something easy. Anyone with a freezer and some ice water trays can do this. So yeah, it's not real. And anyone can try it. It has a lot more to do with the chemical composition of the water, and other effects, which detail with chemical bond angles, and affecting the microstructure of how those water molecules line up as they freeze, and is all affected by, is the majority of the effect of the physical forces on those objects are from molecules which are surrounding them, impurities in the water, you know, whether it's, you know, things you put in the water, that basically those cause way stronger forces than any kind of forces of consciousness could be causing from your brain, or from these. If they do occur, or are real effects, they're very subtle. I don't know of anyone that's ever measured them in a laboratory, or found proof for that kind of stuff. So it's hard to say. It's clear to say that the effect is that the effects of other molecules inside of a solution of water have a much stronger effect on them. But in any case, yeah, we going over the Marx generator stuff. We went over some of these ideas of the space-time metric, and we can find more physics on space-time metric engineering. Jack Sarfati's done a lot of stuff on this, and again, Hal Puthoff, and also written papers with Bernard Hayes and guys like Alfonso Rueda, and even Todd Desiato, who's one of our top contributors at APEC, and a good friend of mine. So yes, and then the idea of sound creating sacred geometry in liquids. Well, also the idea that ultrasound is what they use for this super cavitation. So the guy that did those super cavitation, let me see, super cavitating sonoluminescence. So also when you squeeze these bubbles of light, when you squeeze these bubbles of water under this test, they give off light. So the punching so water, that's the name of the video. It's called Punching Water So Hard That Light Comes Out.
Can make multiple bubbles.
Yeah, so this video, again, you punch the water so hard, it supercavitates and actually can produce light. And is it the Darko Belos paper that claims photons backwards through time? Wheeler, Feynman, advanced wave stuff. So like the yeah, I've seen some of that stuff, but I think Bell's theorem went and proved how that actually works, and that's what they just won the Nobel Prize for this year, was the proof of Bell's theorem with the work of Alan Aspect and others. But anyways, back to this whole idea of the idea you punch the light. No one knows where the light comes from. So one idea is that you're condensing on the amount of electrons. So you're producing a plasma at some point, but there's all debate over when actually this occurs and what actually occurs. But this guy does it, but the way he does it is actually with ultrasound. So he takes like the ultrasound emitter out of a humidifier. It's the same one that looks like is the one that it looks just like the one that I took out of one of my old humidifiers anyway. And he fixes it to the bottom of this flask like so, and hooks it up to a frequency generator with an op amp. And then he's got another one right here. And between the two frequencies, he says he tunes it to a certain resonance, and then he drops a drop of water in, and it traps one of the air bubbles in here, and then he can use the resonance of the sound waves to make it supercavitate. And when it supercavitates, it gives off a ball of light, and no one knows why. It's another physics mystery, but again, what does this have to do with anything else? Well, this is a way to trap light inside, trap bubbles and do supercavitation and do it with sound. You're literally doing it with sound. So it's super cool. You're punching the water using sound. And you got to be super careful, though, with some of these frequencies because they're in a range that you can't hear. And they're a volume that's loud enough to punch water so hard that light comes out. So just be careful of what it's doing to your inner ear and your eardrums if you're experimenting with this kind of stuff. And the guy, talks about some of this in the video. The Thought Emporium. Go check this guy out. This is a great experiment. I would love to try to build this. He said it took him 5 years to get it working right, but you can probably get it down to about a 6 months to a year if you go off of all his notes, because he's really good at explaining how to start this and get it going. But another thing I want to talk about is something called Vibronic Coupling. And I just learned about this kind of today and was diving into it, and I figured I'd include it in tonight's lesson. But basically, matter's a quantum harmonic oscillator. It's the analog of a classical harmonic oscillator, and these wave functions represent the bound eigenstates of the electron wave function as it's bound to the nucleus of an atom, which correspond to those electron orbital levels in our atomic structure. And I thought that this was super interesting graphic, huh? Oh, what, on TOE tomorrow, Lazar? No way, dude. No way. That would be epic. I don't believe it. Yeah, you guys are gonna have to come on and talk about this stuff because some of you guys want to talk about this, but I know I've talked to you behind the scenes, and you're more of an expert than I am. And if anything, I should have you guys on to talk about this. I know I get into it sometimes, but yeah, we'll open it up in a little bit. Oh, what's up, Greg Chase, too? Because gravity fluctuations, aka gravity waves, are still gravity, and gravity permeates everything, including a waveguide, only electromagnetic waves can be contained inside. They reflect off the walls. Okay. Yeah, the gravity waves can't be contained inside. The gravity sort of this a force that permeates everything, and these gravity waves are in the fabric or connection of space time itself, which is again created by, I believe, in my theory, is that it's created by a web of electromagnetic waves that weave the ether together through relativity, and that's quantum gravity, and that quantum gravity is basically a energy, you reach in a lower energy state due to more interactions, and there's more interactions with between bodies that are closer to one another. But again, this is not what I want to get into is the whole idea that molecules can bend and twist in different ways, and there's 6 general different ways that you could say that there's a recoil, or there's 6 different motions inside of an atomic bond that you could model as in physics as a simple harmonic oscillator, for lack of a better term. That you can basically, you'll get resonance. There's going to be damping term, and there's going to be a resonant frequency that you can drive. That you can drive this externally, whether that be ultrasound phononically with sound or phonons, or whether you do it with light or pumping photons into something. You can get things to resonate using these motions and using different resonances that can occur within molecules. So yeah, this incorporates chirality and any kind of because you think about resonances and chirality, they would only affect one polarized, sinusoidally polarized waves in one direction, and they wouldn't affect the other ones, which is an interesting phenomenon, can be used to exploit probably some interesting effects. Which, yeah, again, that's Ronk. We got to get Ronk on to talk about his work with that. There's just so much science, and as in the interview with Greer, as he says, oh, by the way, Singularity Lab, his video I just was on there, it said, what is the Singularity Lab? My question is, where is the Singularity Lab? Man, this guy hasn't done a video in quite a few months, and I don't know, Mike, if you're out there, contact me. Let's get you on as a guest and tell me where you're at. I thought you were starting up a pretty cool channel there for a little while. Anyways, Stephen Greer on here was asked about Bob Lazar as well. Should I get into it and just play his thing with the physics? I mean, people can go look into this. Greer doesn't understand the physics, man. He talks to some scientists that are legit. He drops some things that are legit, but his knowledge of it is not complete enough to really tackle a TOE level audience and interviewer I mean, Kurt was just waiting for the physics, and he's used to explaining it to laymen and getting away with the line that we're only gonna our audience are only laymen, so I only going to break it down so that laymen can understand it. So that's his excuse for not getting the physics right, or getting the physics as exact as he should. I know I don't get the physics always exact as I should, and maybe my vocabulary is not always the best, and I learn the terms later. After, but people, I'm good enough with it that people can understand what I'm describing and get into it. And I know that Kurt is on his audiences. They were fully equipped and ready for the full brunt of it, which sadly Greer could not deliver on. You know, it's just he's not. He knows some of the scientists, but I know more. Not to brag, but I know more of the scientists than he does, and even the ones that he slipped up on the names of. You know, another one, I thought the other scientist that the Japanese scientist, maybe it was Yamaguchi, the cold fusion scientist. But again, maybe he's talking about someone else that I don't know of. If anyone in the audience, if I don't know, then someone in my audience probably knows. But that's pretty much it for who he mentioned. Thomas Townsend Brown, he mentions. So this guy says, "Oh, you've summoned a UFO through meditation with Greer, and he thinks he's legit." That's awesome, man. I wish that would happen for me. I've never seen a UFO, and that would be really cool to see one, especially if you could summon them on command with this protocol that he talks about and stuff. But again, maybe it's just me, and who knows. Anyways. He's asked about Bob Lazar too, and you know, he plays it safe on Bob Lazar. He doesn't, you know, outright call him a fraud like I do. That's lost me a lot of followers for my opinions on Bob and my outright, you know, my attitude on the whole thing, because it's just, I think there's so many more. But Greer does point out that he knows of lots of other scientists which are more credible than Bob, and that's true. And it's just unfortunate that he didn't name, you know, only, you know, less than a dozen of them when he got on the opportunity to. But, you know, we can have a debate on Lazar, and I want to do that. And I want to get Alfonso, is it Rueda or was it Rueda that was on Tim Ventura recently talking about Bob Lazar? So let me find this. Tim Ventura. He just had him on, dude. Ricardo Storti. That's who. Yeah, so Ricardo Storti is a scientist from down under, and he has published some papers with Bernard Heish, I believe. Some of these other guys. I know he's connected with Heish and Putoff and some of those other guys. But he does this whole presentation on Bob Lazar's propulsion system and gets into it. And I'd like to get on and talk about this, but today's not the day, and this isn't the place. But yeah, we'll put a panel together and get into all this and do like all the Bob Lazar stuff to really hash it out. Because he's great. Yeah, he's great to educate the masses on UFOs and get people interested in this stuff, you know. And but yeah, some of his science is just it's really I'm not sure. Yeah, my buddy Darcy Weir did a whole documentary on that dude. I did the TR3B documentary with Darcy, and he did a whole documentary on Schneider. So go check that out. But I don't. Again, I disagree with some of the stuff. I don't believe Schneider either. I think that, you know, he was a. I don't know. I don't believe Schneider either. So a lot of these guys, I don't know about them, but that's why I tend to trust the science and the real scientists and the guys that claim to know the science and aren't credentials get found out and get, you know, routed out pretty easily, because their science just doesn't line up under questioning. It doesn't lead to somewhere fruitful or to somewhere, interesting, or to something that you can actually, learn something from. And the science that I talk about and get into, hopefully it leads you to a whole bunch of interesting new science that you hadn't heard of, like Glauber states, something that Jack Sarfati talks about all the time. And these coherent states in vibronic coupling, again, electronic vibration coupling. Vibronic is literally, the term vibronic originates from the combination of the terms vibrational and electronic, denoting the idea that in a molecule, vibrational and electronic interactions are interrelated and influence each other. That's correct. We're all built of these molecules. Anyways, I'm going to open this up to the StreamYard's live chat. Oops, no, cancel that. Nope. That's not what I want to do. Copy that, and let's post this in the live chat. Let's get some people on. And yeah, Tim Ventura is killing it, man, and so isn't Theories of Everything with Kurt Jamungle. Kurt, thank you for joining us in the live chat tonight. And your interview with Greer was awesome. You did an excellent job, and I encourage everyone who hasn't seen the whole thing, please go there and watch it, and stay tuned for the next interviews that Kurt has coming up. He has some really amazing guests lined up, and I think you're getting Sal Pays back on again to talk more about the physics, and hopefully I can dig up that old email with some of the more technical questions that we wanted to ask him about some stuff. Yeah, it's he's not as good, like there's a lot of stuff that he did where, the older videos have all been deleted. And if you post them or show them, then you get fake copyright strikes, and you get them taken down on your channel. It's like they're banned and censored. It's kind of interesting what goes on with that. I must say, if Lazar goes on Kurt, dude, it's going to be all over, because if he's a fraudster with the physics, man, Kurt's going to call him out. If he really has the ability to fool EG&G and Los Alamos, that he was really a physicist, an MIT educated, physicist fresh out of grad school, then he's going to be able to hold it down. You know what I mean? But anyways, do you guys want to stay live? Or we've got 200 people watching. We might as well just stay live.
I would say that's a pretty good idea at this point. I mean, if that many people are interested in your impromptu stream, apparently some people at least got the notifications. A lot of us didn't, but at least some people got the notifications, so that's a good start. I just tried to live stream for the first time today on Exotic Propulsion, and that was a complete failure. I had pre-selected the microphone settings, set everything up 24 hours in advance, but YouTube decided, screw you. We're not going to let you change anything during the live stream, and we'll default your microphone settings to something that you didn't select. And so I had no audio for the 5.5 minutes, and the stream was a failure. So I guess it's not quite so straightforward.
Yeah, oh man, it's good when you find out. Like, I usually do like the sound check in the first minute just to make sure, because it's happened so many times to me.
I did. It was my first time trying like the YouTube live stream feature too, and that particular channel does not have 1,000 subs yet, so I'm kind of up against the wall there. Plus, it's not been around all that long, so it doesn't have that long historical documentation to back it up. I guess I shouldn't have really expected more, but that's why we did the test. And it was an epic failure, but hey, at least I know now. I'm not sure what to do about it, though, unfortunately. I'm probably going to have to get an OBS or a StreamYard and see if we can fix some of these problems by using an external software.
Yeah, I got to figure out, I got to figure out a lot of that stuff on my end, too, here, and I'm missing some stuff. So I'm going to a conference tomorrow, actually, down here in Rhode Island on free energy.
Heck yeah, man. Which one?
It's it's the Offshore 2022 Wind Power Conference. So I guess 80,000. There's been like a couple billion that went into this big fund to fund offshore wind, because a lot of the rich people were mad about some of the wind farms going in their backyards and bringing down their property value here on land. So they're fine with putting it out in the ocean, though, deep in the water, because there's lots of wind out there, and there's not a lot of people to bother with the they don't care about if it kills birds out there. It just feeds the fish. And
yeah, I guess that's a good point.
I don't know. all the problems that people have pointed out about wind power,
the insignificant amount of birds that may possibly extraordinarily unlikely fly into a turbine is pretty darn insignificant. I guess my biggest gripe would obviously be outside the scope of a reasonable conversation, because I'd have to go all conspiracy and bring up the points about how there are plenty of no moving parts alternative energy solutions that we could be using, should have been using, and have been available for at least 50 years. And somehow we're still building giant, toxic, extremely high carbon footprint, if you even care about that, wind turbines, battery systems, and alternative energy solutions, which are subpar at best. After all, NASA has had the technology for solar panels reaching 30% efficiency for quite some time, but apparently they don't work on Earth, as they utilize that extra wave band of energy only available outside the atmosphere. Come on now. We've already known about folded solar solutions. Perovskites are a particular interest, and those things can generate significantly more power. They've already recorded, I think, a maximum of 32% efficiency. Good luck seeing those. And over 25, 30 years ago, I'm trying to remember what the guy's name was, Alvin something. Anyways, yeah, he had created a plastic polymer polarized film made of entirely non-semiconductor materials, basically plastics layered in a specific way in order to extract energy with super cheap materials. He was claiming at that time it's like $1 per square meter for the materials, and nobody ever took it up, did anything with it. And of course, our favorite research documentary database guy, Mr. R, or what do we call him? Terran Earthling. Yes, he's got all that stuff on file and knows well about it. That's been ignored too. We have energy solutions. It's just that society as a whole is ignoring them because they're not presently accepted in the academic science. And it's quite pathetic because we're hurting ourselves as a species.
Well, we got to get the materials together in the lab to do that. Well, the other thing that Stephen Greer talks about in this is that, he's got the initiative to do this so that the scientists have this, they can go forward and come to him and go through him, which is funny because I reached out to Greer and his group and was like, what happens when, someone in our group gets this, and, are we going to collaborate? Are you going to help? And he has me blocked on Twitter and stuff. And I'm just like, I'm not sure what's going on with Mr. Greer and his initiative. And I'd be very curious to know, what that's got to be being watched. You announce something like that, then you become a target, and they start watching you because they're like, oh, other people are going to leak through this dude or come out with information through this guy. And we need to all make ourselves targets so that there's too many points on the map for them to follow. And
that's a good point.
And here's one
exactly. You nailed it with that comment. I mean, you couldn't have really said it better. If everybody is a target, what the heck are they going to do? They only have a finite amount of resources, and so far, with one at a time coming out, they can easily pluck us off. But if we all come at once, yeah, they're kind of screwed. I mean, honestly, right now the community is coming in a wave. It's such an intense movement that's going on right now, even outside of our community. And people and I've seen this on a bunch of YouTube channels that have nothing to do with APEC, have nothing to do with what we've done over the last 12 years or 23 years in my case, has nothing to do with any of this stuff. These guys don't even know about us, and they are suddenly coming out in droves. There's obviously a major motion happening in society as a whole, and I think it's because people are so fed up with the ridiculousness of inflation and how much things are beginning to cost and how untrustworthy the governments of the world are for all major first world countries and then some. I mean, people just are losing faith in authority and they're beginning to take things into their own hands. And now we have all these new burgeoning technologies. But how do they get out there? Well, it's really got to be a community effort, grassroots, if you will.
Yeah,
and we are that grassroots. We are the soil on which the grass grows, as far as I'm concerned.
This is why I'm going to this conference. I'm going. Actually, my dad got invited to go and write on the conference for IEEE for his company. He writes a lot of technical articles for energy solution, alternative energy, and stuff like that, and emerging trends in technology and stuff like that. So I'm going to go and film him actually interviewing a bunch of people, and he's going to be my expert in my subject. So I get to do that. It'll be cool. And I'm going to collect a whole bunch of cards from as many of these companies as I can, because I'm going to start emailing these people and introducing them to some of these other alternative energy ideas as well. Because these guys got lots of money and they're interested in the alternative energies and stuff. And a lot of them have a lot of the technical and scientific background as well. So it's good to network with these people regardless. Because once they find out that there's a cheaper and better way to do it than they've been doing it, naturally the market just adjusts. So,
yeah. Let me address a couple of the chat comments. Like I say, so one asks, what are the other systems that are related to David Perez warp drive tech? And those systems, you have the PNN, which is also known as the Italian thruster. It's a Lorentz force-based thruster according to the ASPS team. That one operates by the same exact principles, but it does it by using variable permeability materials to attenuate the vacuum refractive index, whereas David Perez does not use any variable refractive index materials. He's simply doing wave interference in a very Tom Bearden way. Now, we also have the Canadian drive, which is significantly different than Scheuer's M drive. And the reason for why is that the Canadian drive optimizes wave interaction points and tries to concentrate them at nodes so that you have a more complicated field interaction. And that's something particularly interesting to look towards. I've seen a lot of other warp-capable technologies that I personally believe are producing time differentials or warp dynamics, but I don't have the evidence to back those things up, so I'm not going to bring those up yet at this time. But I am actively conducting a research project right now and trying to replicate many of these different experiments so that we can prove whether or not they actually are Lorentz force or Lorentz transform, or whether they're actually warping the variable metric tensors of space-time itself.
Yeah, that's one thing. Like Greer says really quick was, you don't have the time to talk about the Maxwell's equations and Poynting vector, right?
But that's like the starting point for where we have to begin in order to correct the bad mathematics. We can't use Heaviside Gibbs.
I don't have the time because I don't know any better. Or I don't know.
Yeah, well, if you don't have the...
Can you put that link in the chat window, please?
That was the time to do it. You're on Kurt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Could you put the
Kurt
link in the
Chimongel is
window?
awesome, dude. Kurt Chimongel has done such a good job being an excellent host, letting the right names on and providing a very professional and smoothly clean environment. And Tim is like one of the most laid-back hosts you could possibly get. You could literally talk about anything with Tim, and he'll give you the time of day and the patience to let you speak, but still manage to not let things get out of control. And that's a specific talent that I wish I had more of. But I learned from Tim. He's kind of like, a role model for how to be a good presenter to me.
Yeah, he's a good host, dude. That's why, like, when we were talking about who to select for like the conference that we couldn't
have had a better choice, dude.
Yes.
I got to give credit, at least in this case, to Mr. Sokol, though, because he did call this first. I mean, it was within 10 minutes of the end of Estes Park after we got booted out of that, and he turns to me as we're talking about what we're going to call this conference, right? And he's like, I know exactly who the host should be. It should be Tim Ventura. I'm like, are you sure Tim has the time for this? He's got a family. He's got a bunch of stuff going on. He's like, trust me, Jeremiah. I know it has to be Tim Ventura. It has to be. He's the right guy for this.
I thought I was saying that. I suggested.
He was right, dude. He was right.
I know I suggested Tim Ventura. I was like the first person that came to mind. I was like, it's got to be Tim.
It was absolutely Tim.
Hey, what's Tim's background?
What's that?
What's Tim's background?
That's a great question, actually. I'd like to kind of know that a little bit.
He's been doing AAG lifters. He's been involved in the JLN, studying Yahoo groups before really anybody even knew about them. Like Tim's been in this about at least as long as I have. It's one of the few guys that's been here the entire time.
I don't know if he's got a technical background, or any like fancy degrees or anything.
He's a self-taught guy.
But you know, I don't have a fancy degree. I just have a physics degree from local college here. But yeah, he's not really super on math, but he's done a lot of the experiments, and he's good with he's been down a lot of the bullshit rabbit holes. And
jeez, we got more.
Well, he talked about he was a professional physicist.
He knows how to steer people away from those dark alleys.
I'd say between Jeremy, and Tim, they're some of the brightest people in this field, no doubt.
Really?
I think that if we had any particular talent, it wouldn't be at all that we're the brightest people in this field. I would say that we are all extremely good at one particular thing, finding the brightest people in this field and learning from them. I think that's our superpower, is locating people that are way smarter than us and just listening to them.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Other mods for getting rid of the bots. Appreciate that. Yeah, as soon as I think it's 165 is the number at which the bots automatically come onto your stream. I think past that point you attract them.
Weird. I wonder what we could do with let's well, you want to play a little more of this Greer interview?
Sure, go ahead.
Absolutely.
Hey, real quick, I noticed I didn't get a notification this time or the last 10 times, and I noticed nobody else did. Maybe we can have a list that texts us on our phone when it's starting or going to start.
Yeah, I got to get some way to put a thing out about that. You know what? This is cool, but Kurt's already seen this, and if we got Kurt sitting here watching, he doesn't want to watch that over again. You know what I want to show is my friend Brian Kelly's channel and some of his videos, because we were talking about Brian on the other night. He said thanks for the shout out on Twitter. He's super psyched that we gave him some credit for that, and he wants to. He's putting together a whole presentation on his stuff. Okay. And he said, as soon as it's ready, he'll let me know. And I said, well, if you want to debut it on my channel, you should, man. Cause if it's as legit as you say, that they're going to shut you down on your channel. You only get 155 views on it. And they're going to shut it. They could shut you down, so you should debut it on my channel. And so he might do that. I want to play his video, couple parts of this. And it's about engineering that space-time metric.
Oh, looks interesting.
Let me play this part.
Heck yeah, dude. Recognizing variable space-time metrics is the very beginning point. Without that, we have nothing.
Which is pretty warm. I guess that would be around if 10 Mercury.
Isn't terahertz just above green?
So it's some material. I don't know what. Let's see what it is.
Yeah, it's terahertz is in the visible range, so the visible range is a terahertz, is in the terahertz range.
Made out
But
of vanadium dioxide metamaterial.
Just so you know, if you're trying to full screen a video right now, we see you browsing. Oh, that is the video. I see. Never mind.
So
Sorry.
the terahertz gap is actually in the infrared of the terahertz range, so it's in the lower side. It's on the lower side. So you start getting into that infrared section, you get into millimeter and you eventually get into millimeter and submillimeter waves, but right in that section before then is like the terahertz range.
What kind of stuff, we'll be building spaceships out of. You want a layer of that, then you want a layer of this. Until you perfect it. But to get started,
You or somebody chatting?
That's actually the video that I think he's trying to show. But yeah, we're not looking at on screen exactly what's playing right now. That's what I was saying.
What side it's coming in, what side it's going out.
Did you mean to play only audio, Jeremy, and show something different, or what?
Now this is a little graphic I made to get interest. It goes too fast, so you have to keep looking at
Oh,
it.
hey, something interesting I found about terahertz scanning right in optical. I put that video there. It's MIT about scanning a closed book.
Moving,
And they put several
it's a trade-off between
like disk pages together, and they could scan each together even though they were closed.
the other thing.
Could they read the text?
Take
Yep.
a look at that.
With several pages stacked together.
Yep, they were looking at it, just taking a regular book, sitting it down, and scanning the whole thing without ever opening it.
Basically says
That's absurdly incredible.
Yeah, that video right there, if other people want to watch it, I put the
Dude, we
link
should
in.
watch that one. You got to pull that up. What? I guess I don't know if MIT is what I think they're not Creative Commons technically, so I don't know what he could get away with if he shows that. But
I don't know.
I would really like to see that too. We should discuss that.
Well, I think for education purposes, we're still allowed to view it, aren't we?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Yeah, we qualify under the Creative Commons stuff as far as we're using it for educational purposes, and so it does fall under that criteria. But YouTube and these trolls don't really give a darn about that, and so you get strikes regardless of whether or not you actually comply with that rule set.
Maybe I can just find the best couple of seconds that explains it. See where he talks about it. Yeah, the entire thing is only like 4 minutes long, and they don't really get into the technical details too much. It's more like a layman's description. But he talks about where they can put, they didn't use like a regular, they showed between 550 gigahertz to 1 terahertz at 201 in the video.
Yeah, that's a real sweet range to be in for heavy atoms.
Is recognizing the characters themselves. There's a shadow of different
When you get into lighter atoms like hydrogen, you need a higher frequency.
The has to be able to recognize.
I'm going to mute myself so I don't pass this on to you and look at it for a second.
No, I'll shut up too.
That image looks familiar.
Brian's going to come on here.
The Jetson.
He's going to come on and explain this all to us and break it down because he's got some good insights on how to build this. I want to get the experiment we're going to do next, man. We want to figure out how we're going to build these metamaterials. What layers? Is it a 1D material with layers? Is it do we need a 2D, a 3D metamaterial? Metasurfaces?
Interestingly, I'm working with a very intelligent fellow right now
Well,
that has discovered an interesting phenomena between the interaction of current flow on a current carrying conductor with a fairly wide surface area, flat conductor, and a highly permeable ferromagnetic material in such a way that you can attenuate the field forces within direct current flowing through a coil by using specific materials placed at the correct locations and receive an output force. So we are working on that actively, and I'll actually be testing that in less than a few hours.
What exactly was it you were testing?
It's a device that uses a DC coil made of flat wire and a highly ferromagnetic, high permeability material that is placed
Like the new metal stuff?
That's not what I'm using right now, but it's something that I intend to test for an AC system. This is just a DC system. That's the really weird part about that. We've heard a lot about how direct current and current flowing can produce possible forces, but generally the idea with direct currents is the field is continuous and constant, so you don't get much of these fast transient or IDV/DT effects. But in this particular case, it's simply utilizing variable magnetic permeability and also taking advantage of the charged particle flow through a conductor as it's carrying current to produce an asymmetric force.
Oh, okay.
It's a totally different system. I've never seen something quite like it. And I know what I'm explaining now isn't really actionable, but I have a prototype sitting basically about 8 feet away from me, so it is actionable. I just haven't explained it in such a way that would put his intellectual property on the line yet.
Right. Most of your experiments about producing motion?
Yeah, that's correct.
Lifters?
Experiment producing motion. Not lifters. I mean, these are non-ionic, non-atmospheric.
I know what you mean. I couldn't think of a better name, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm not saying it flies. I'm just saying it produces a force when you pump power into it, and that force is not dependent upon atmospheric entrainment or moving fluids or any kind of conventional MHD effect. It's actually a space-time refractive index phenomena that grows from a variable permeability and unbalanced force due to the fact that electrons flowing have a higher geometrically amplified field than the protons that are trapped in that wire. It's very similar to Richard Van Derek's work on complex electric fields, but utilizes a principle which is, I think, much more achievable and simple, certainly lower cost, and produces still significant forces with it. That's why I'm really interested in it, because it takes all of Richard Van Derek's fantastic output results and turns it into something that you can build with common materials that don't require, say, 10-layer carbon vapor deposition graphene or any of these other very specialized doped graphene expanded materials. So
I'm not familiar with Van Derek's at all, but
Van Derek had a presentation on APEC as well. It was a really, really excellent presentation, and he talks about this concept of complex electric fields, and more importantly, the major error in the Heaviside Gibbs adaptation of Maxwell's equations, how quaternions were turned into a simple set of equations that completely remove the variable refractive index terms and gauge everything out to zero. Well, the idea that there's only 2 interacting fields between parallel wires is wrong. There's actually 6. He identifies all of them and defines exactly how they interact. So I'm not going to say his math is right. I can't weigh in on that. I will say that his principle is absolutely right. He's already proved it in the lab, got 25 grams of force with less than 20 watts, which is huge, of course. I mean, that's so beyond. It's so beyond. Ion thrusters are the best that mankind has ever made.
That's a huge gain.
Huge. It's huge. I mean, I've heard rumors, and I can't verify this, that he's already achieved a system light enough by optimizing the system to hold itself up. But again, that's just a rumor. I do know, just looking at the setup and knowing what he's using, that it's absolutely possible. CVD graphene 10 layers weighs almost nothing, and even the doped material on the other side weighs almost nothing. The only weight there is the structure holding things together, and that could, of course, be done quite simply with the removal of a large amount of materials in an optimized setup. 6 fields of interaction, 3 from each wire. And that's just with 2 parallel wires carrying a DC current. That's it. You've got 6 field interactions, 3 from each wire.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess His Highness.
Okay, there, yeah, I finally found him.
So
I can only find part 4.
It's all there somewhere.
Yeah.
that's Richard Van Derek. He's good. That's it. He goes through a good derivation there. Yeah, in part 4 and 5 of the field effect propulsion Q&A.
And again, I'm not going to tell people, don't worry about the math. I mean, there's probably errors in the math. Eric and I have gone over that, and there are probably errors, but don't worry about that. Just look at the fact that he's actually at results, and the principles there that he's pointing out. There are errors in the present set of equations, and if we don't recognize them, if we ignore them,
Yeah.
we can't get anywhere, because we're basically saying all the metric tensors of space-time are non-variable constants, and we can do nothing about it unless we had ridiculous energy levels. And what he's basically saying is these constants vary every single time any amount of current flows, no matter how small or large. And if we recognize that, we can compound these effects on each other and create a much greater output.
So Kurt's saying that he definitely wants to go through the math and stuff. And as you point out, yeah, you could go through the math yourself, or you could watch this video with Dr. Nathan Innen, where he walks you through the math on all this. And, you know, these interpretation, this gem theory interpretation of where you get this pointing vector and this propulsion theory from. And, you know, he talks about that in probably the best detail that I've seen from a physics standpoint, Kurt. So yeah, if you want to check that out, he's got a great channel and only 15 subscribers. So go check Nathan Innen out. I learned about him through Estes Park conference where he spoke.
You post that link and he'll double his subs overnight.
Or if you have a link. Do you have a channel link for us to check it?
Oh, I don't know if this is him. This is not him. This is some other dude. Oh, wait, this might be him. He jams. He plays guitar.
Is that Inan? I-N-A-N?
What the heck?
I need glasses.
We'd be doing Freebird solo. Oh, not bad. I'll have to check that out later. But yeah, it looks like the same stuff there. This University of California. Yeah, I think this is the same dude. But these are the ones: Fresno St. Physics and yeah.
We have a Brian Kelly with us.
Good.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, Brian. You want to share your screen? I'll give you the floor for a little bit to talk about your ideas. Kurt's asking for the math. He said he checked out some of your stuff, and he says it's mostly fluff. Doesn't have much math that I can see. So yeah, for the math side of it, yeah, Nathan Innen goes through that whole gem theory and the pointing vector and this whole theory of general relativity and stuff, which I'll get into later. I want to get into this. I want to get into the real stuff about how to engineer this with the metamaterials and what we're actually trying to do. And so you had a really cool idea, Brian.
Yeah.
That.
What math is he looking for? Space-time relationship with terahertz?
Yeah. Anything like with that?
Well, there might be a basic confusion here. I'm not saying that space-time is made out of photons. I'm saying that most of outer space, you know, most of what's in space-time is light, photons. There's also mass here, but the vast majority of it is, you know, by square unit is light.
May I ask you a clarifying question?
Yes.
Okay, so this is something that we've kind of been going over now for almost the last year, and it comes down to the definition of photons. So a photon is considered an electromagnetic transverse transmission caused by a charged particle moving at a orthogonal angle, and it produces a magnetic and electric field, each of which are 90 degrees to each other, and the motion of those two fields is orthogonal to both, meaning that the direction of the pointing vector for the photons travel through space-time is 90 degrees to both the magnetic and the electric field. So you have all three axes covered. That's unfortunately the conventional definition of how we determine photons. But if we consider things like, say, the Coulomb force, scalar potential is where we don't actually have a wavelength of any kind of photon at all. We have just no magnetic field, a purely electric field between two charged particles that are stationary to each other, meaning they're in the same frame of reference. They are still communicating a force between each other, so it can't be a photon because it has zero wavelength, and the electric and magnetic field vectors can't be at 90 degrees because there is really no magnetic field vector whatsoever in this case. And if we transmit, we could stress just the permeability or the permeativity. If we stress just epsilon, we change that phase angle. If we stress just mu, we change that phase angle. So with that premise, what I want to ask you is, as far as photons are defined, do you think that the conventional definition of photons properly applies, or that we need to change our definition of what a photon means so that we can actually communicate ideas like the Coulomb force?
Well, I didn't follow the second part of that compound question, but
okay, I'll simplify it then.
The simple 90 degrees and 90 degrees, and the basic notion of a photon that everybody has. That's all I'm talking about. I like it. Things very simple. The Coulomb stuff you were asking about, that has nothing to do with my thinking that I know of. Does that answer your question?
Unfortunately, it does, but leaves a lot to be desired.
What are you missing?
Well, the thing is, if all charged particles communicate forces between each other through photons, which is the definition of photons, the carrier of the electromagnetic force, then it doesn't include things like the Coulomb force.
Well, to be honest with you, I don't care about the Coulomb force. You know, you might be right about that. You might be wrong. I don't have an answer for you on that because I don't need one, mainly. You know, that's a side issue to me as far as I'm concerned, to what I'm trying to say, which is the simplest, most dumbed down way I can remember things. I'm not going to bring in Coulomb forces if I don't need them. But I'm not trying to redefine the photon or its interactions with anything in any way.
Would photons be the only way the force could be transferred?
They're clearly not. But
yeah,
that's the definition as it stands.
I was going to chime in there, but I think you both nailed it perfectly.
Well, I just wouldn't call it that. I'd call it, you know, I think in terms of radiation pressure and whatnot. I mean, you can maybe redefine Coulomb forces as radiation pressure or, you know, whatever. There's 1,000 different ways to define the same thing. I'm trying to make my point as simply and as clearly as possible. But I'll, no doubt I'll look into the Coulomb force again, but I just see that as peripheral to getting to the point of pumping light, absorbing a photon, shrinking it down, and exploding it out the other side. That's, whether that involves Coulomb forces, yeah, it probably does. But
you had me up to exploding it out the other side. I think that's the part of the explanation that I didn't quite understand. What do you mean by exploding it out?
Yeah, well, I think it fits into kind of what you were asking. When a photon is absorbed by an atom or a molecule, typically it shrinks drastically, in the scale, in the range of, 1,000-fold or more. My standard example is a 1 angstrom hydrogen atom versus a 6,500 nanometer photon, or 650 nanometer, something like that. Nanometers versus angstroms. You're talking orders of magnitudes of thousands. That's right. For an atom. It may be a little less beneficial for a molecule. Then you have your sub-wavelength waveguides, which is going to shrink the photon as it's absorbed, pick up the momentum from it, and then blow it out the other side. It's just like a pump on a submarine, is is what I'm trying to express, but only at the photonic level, not the space-time level. To me, now you're talking the difference between a nanometer and a Planck length, and you're talking the difference there of 26 zeros.
Yeah, you're correct, but we're also identifying here that the Planck scale defines what the distance of a nanometer is in any frame of reference.
Yeah, I agree, and it says that I don't think nanometers are affecting the Planck scale very. They are somewhat, but it's infinitesimal. I think this entire space-time thread of thoughts along these lines, while it should be pursued, it's not, to me, it doesn't look fruitful. I don't see how you're going to interact with something that tiny with something that we can manipulate, which it's even difficult in the angstrom level or the nanometer level.
Well, what if I told you the simplest explanation of how we can manipulate those things by using atoms? Take, for example, the nuclei of, say, a hydrogen atom. All we have to do is apply an external magnetic field across some hydrogen gas and then bombard it at 90 degrees with a radio wave. What we end up doing is producing a decay waveform in the nuclei where they oscillate, they precess, and then come back to their center axes trying to align with the external field, but they radiate a terahertz wavelength when they do that.
Well, that's convenient, but...
And now we can get beyond that nanometer scale. We can get down into some very, very fine scales that are actually... Yeah, but that's,
to my way of thinking, and I don't mean to interrupt you, that has nothing to do with... That's not going to do anything to gravity or
it absolutely will. Yes, it will, Brian.
Wouldn't that just make it vibrate instead of actually move?
Well, you're saying vibrating,
it was putting out
shooting radio wave. You already have the terahertz waves. They're ambient. You don't have to generate anything or make anything vibrate or anything like that. You're sitting in a sea of terahertz waves.
Coefficient, yeah. If you want to control the gravitational coupling coefficient between a gravitational body like Earth, for example, and say some target object made of matter, then yeah, you do actually need to control that stuff because that's how we decouple the two from each other.
I was just thinking.
Well, okay. Now I think we might be on the same wavelength. Pardon the expression, but
perfectly appropriate.
It's not. Yeah. You would You could argue, and as I have done in writing, that you are decoupling or disentangling mass from the gravitational field because the light, the terahertz, whether you generate it or whether it's ambient, is going to diminish the effect of the gravitational field and inertia on the mass that it is entangled with. And by entangled, I don't mean fancy entanglement, spooky distances. I mean enmeshed, linked with, involved with. You could call it a field effect if you'd like.
Yeah, you could just
say I think we agree on that.
The matter target to be affected by an external thing like a gravitational source.
It'll diminish it.
Yeah. So
I think I agree with you.
Explanation of how that works, what we're really doing is we're adding external energy to the nuclei spin precession and to the electron valence shells. And by adding extra energy, we have a mass energy equivalence. And so as the energy increases in that system, but it's electromagnetic energy that's increasing in that system being produced by matter and the precession of the magnetic moments, what we're doing is increasing the local energy without actually increasing the amount of physical matter. And that
I agree. You can drop the magnetic moment part, though, and precessions. Other than that, I'm right with you. You just jacked up, you just energized a hydrogen atom. And when you do that, it'll start moving through the phases from solid to liquid to gas, whereby it starts becoming less beholden to inertia as a liquid, it'll fall from side to side. That's your inertia becoming overcome by the fact that your energy levels are higher because you are moving light through it either naturally or artificially, like we're going to do. And we keep moving it through the liquid. Suddenly, it's a gas, generally speaking. I use water as an example. Now it's anti-gravity and anti-inertia. All I'm saying, like those trillion-ton clouds hanging over your head now of heavier than air stuff. Why do you think that is?
Because we live in an electric circuit where we have 400,000 volts to keep those charged particles being bombarded with positive ions from the upper
drop the
atmosphere
volts. I gotta say, the electromagnetic stuff, unless it's at the light photon level, I find it superfluous. I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong, but I can see a trillion-ton cloud over my head of heavier than air stuff any day I walk outside. I have never seen an electrographic whatchamacallit. And I don't think I'm going to see it soon, but the magnetic progressions and the volts and all that stuff, that's for other people, not me.
Okay, well, let's ask a question more specifically suited to you. If we were trying to build a craft ourselves, an actual physical device that utilized the principles you're proposing, what would the approach be that you might suggest?
A metamaterial that takes advantage, just to start, metamaterial that takes advantage of this light pumping capability. And I have, I put a couple links in the chat before. I've done videos and moments, and I have a small video channel, and it's new and it's not watched much, but it has it in there in extreme detail. Well, as much as you're going to see anywhere on how to get started with this stuff. You start with something simple that will move light like that, like a simple graphene, which is graphene that's been which every carbon atom on it has had a hydrogen attached to it. Not easy to make. I don't know if you can do it in Hawthorne or Milwaukee or what. I don't know about that yet, but
at least you know where we are. That's pretty darn good.
I know a lot about where you are. Yeah, I know where you are. Yeah, I've been watching since day one of this.
You've been down there, man.
Well, you got memory points, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh no, I have. Yeah, I've been working on. I didn't just drop in today out of the clear blue sky.
No, I've seen your name many times. You've been around for quite a while, Brian.
Yeah, I've been blowharding quite a bit, and I'm almost ready to come on APEC, but I got to boil down all this hot air into 1 hour, and I have so much of it, and it has to be done efficiently and all that, and I'm working on it. I'll get to it, and I think Jeremy has a good idea. I should probably start on his show and then do APEC.
I'd love that, too, and don't forget, Tim Ventura does interviews, too, so if you've got a presentation, he'll gladly take you.
Yeah, well, I will... I make no assumptions. I will ask to be invited and all that.
I'll put you in contact if you need to be.
Well, thank you, Jeremiah. I appreciate that. But anyway, it's one day at a time with this stuff. But yeah, I have. Actually, I started doing an APEC presentation. I made a video out of it, and in it, I even had a little prop. I'm like, okay, Mark Sokol, I know you're going to ask the first question, and I know what it's going to be. And Jeremiah, you just asked it. Pardon me?
I said, let's hear it. What's the first question?
Oh, yeah. Well, you just asked me a minute ago, and I should have my little – see, I'm holding up my little prop here, but I don't have it here. It's in the other room. It's
I virtually see it, yes.
It's a piece of graphene. And what you do is, you screw around with it. You try to infuse it with hydrogen because helium won't work on that stuff. They don't mix. And, say you're in Hawthorne, New Jersey, and you can only get 1/3 of the atoms to stick because it was a miracle happened somehow. Anyway, you take it out, you put it on a table, you wave Jeremiah's magic wand around it. This is where the volts and the magnets come in, okay? Controlling the metamaterial or metasurface. All that polariton stuff Jeremy's talking about, that's another angle. That's a way to make a waveguide, a certain kind of waveguide. But I think you have to build up. You build up with the simpler metamaterials and up in complexity. And you can buy some of this stuff here and there, and sooner or later people will get interested and they'll want to invest, et cetera, and so forth, because it's idiot proof. You already have zeppelins and balloons. This is the same principle, only optimized, writ large, scaled. I don't care what you want to call it. You make it efficient. The gas in the balloon isn't random atoms fighting against each other. It's on the surface of the skin. The skin's as deep as you want to make it, and it's every other angstrom, every other atomic point. You can basically almost do that now. Oh, when I say that, I mean, economically, because none of us have those high-tech labs that crank out these papers with the pressure and temperature of the hydrogen and the graphene is perfect. You're not going to do that in Hawthorne.
I agree with you. We really need a proton accelerator to fully embed and impregnate the graphene with hydrogen appropriately. Let me answer Kurt Jamungel's question about the Coulomb force and why I have a problem with the definition of the photon. Okay, so the definition of the photon is that it is a quantized finite packet of electromagnetic energy. By quantized, it means it has a finite exacting value. And if we have two charged particles that are exerting a force against each other, they are not accelerating in any direction. They are statically the same distance from each other and not being affected by external fields. They experience an attraction or repulsion depending if they're like charged or oppositely charged. A photon requires a quantized packet of energy to be sent between charged particles in order to communicate a force in its definition. And what I'm saying is, if you have no wavelength, because the particles are not accelerating, they have no motion relative to each other, and they are in the same frame of reference, you have a Coulomb force, an electrostatic force produced by the charge of the electron, the charge of the proton, and even, in this case, the magnetic moment of the neutron, which is how neutrons can stay in the nucleus. It's part of the strong force, but at a fine scale, you get this kind of interaction, which still applies, and you just simply have to understand how space-time is physically curved or modified by the mass energy of the quarks spinning inside of the protons and neutrons. Those are responsible for most of the mass of protons and neutrons. In fact, it's over 99% of the mass of any proton or neutron is because of the rotating three-part quarks inside those particles. When you separate them, that mass disappears, and if they're not moving, that mass disappears. So we know that the mass is a result of the motion of these subatomic particles. Photons don't really take that into account, and this is the reason why quantum gravity has had such a major issue trying to be united with electromagnetism, and it's why Einstein spent the last 15 years of his life attempting to unite electromagnetism and gravity. This is the biggest hiccup, if you will, in physics that still hasn't been resolved, at least in the major scientific community.
When Feynman graduated with his PhD in physics from Princeton, and the first question his dad asked him was, where does the photon come from? And he couldn't answer that question. And I think that's kind of been answered, but it has never been fully mathematically materialized what exactly happens in there. And we've just been discussing on this program the last 3 episodes in a lot of detail. One of the things we concluded was that the fine structure constant was actually result of the Coulombic force, and that inherent in this is the Coulomb force, 1/4 pi epsilon naught.
It makes perfect sense. It really does.
If you have the electric fundamental electric charge. So if you have a proton and electron being attracted to each other in the nucleus of an atom, and it's vibrating at it doesn't vibrate at the speed of light because it can't, because it's an object. So it vibrates at a fraction of the speed of light, and that fraction of the speed of light is this. It's this thing over c. And so that the fine structure constant is really just a ratio of velocities. It's a ratio of it's a velocity of the simple harmonic motion of the electron in the structure of the atom, and how that, and the ratio of that velocity to the velocity of light. And that's why there's this coupling constant, because in order for there to be a coupling between the electric field and a photon, there has to be this impedance match with that velocity drop. That it has the speed of light, actually the photon, when it hits the electronic structure, the electronic cloud, it actually has to slow down, and slows down for a brief moment inside that structure. So the speed of light inside of an atom inside of the electron cloud of an atom is actually slower than the speed of light in a vacuum. And that's what creates the coupling between the photonic energy and the electronic cloud of the vacuum. So this is where the photon comes from. This is where it goes.
Exactly. And if it didn't exist, the electrons would simply fall into the protons and they would react, right? But that's not what happens. And why? Well, because there is a variable refractive index, and there's a balancing point.
Hey, I got two questions. How is the space inside the atom compared to the space outside the atom? Why it slows it down?
Near field, Fresnel zone, and far field. It's because of the energy density surrounding the individual particles and their moving dipole moments. They are constantly radiating energy, but the radiated energy is neutralized with an opposite charge around a non-ionized or equally balanced atom. So if you have the correct number of electrons to match the protons, and whatever number of neutrons you have, if say you have an equal number of neutrons to protons, you end up with all completely balanced forces, and nothing really escapes the far field because it's all neutralized in the Fresnel zone. If you consider antenna physics with nuclei, then you have the answer.
Am I understanding that right?
Go ahead again.
Is it just the stress of the electric field between the nucleus and the electrons that slows it down?
The electric and the magnetic field, but also those things are being attenuated by the localized radiated energy density coming from the dipole moments of moving charged particles. They increase so basically what they do, if you were to consider it simply, they increase the amount of space inside the atom to the point where electromagnetic waves slow down when they are near the periphery of an atom, and they really, really slow down when they are actually past that inner valence, the closest electron valence shell distance to the nuclei. They really, really slow down, because there you have an incredibly high energy density, and that energy has a mass equivalence, and that mass equivalence have a gravitational.
So it's not just outside the atom. There's a gradient to it then.
There's an extreme gradient, and it's not symmetrical because the Bohr model is obviously wrong. The atomic structure, the physical electron structure of an atom is incredibly different than the original Bohr model. They can have rather complex attenuations, but you'll see lobes and antinodes. You'll see these sort of bowing. If you've ever seen like the transmission structure of an antenna or the receiving structure of a cardioid microphone, for example, if you just look at where these waves come in and what kind of lobes they have, those are basically how the electrons travel around an atom. They're not at all exactly, Jeremy, just like that. They're not at all in rings or nice even orbits. The classic atomic model is incorrect. These things come in, they get very, very close to the nuclei. They slow down significantly when they get there because the energy density is so high. They're going through a much larger volume of space from their frame of reference.
Is the atom the same for that as far as being more one-sided than the other, or is it the same in all directions? Just more dense?
Well, it really depends. The asymmetry of the distribution for charge and charge carriers, that is electrons, protons, neutrons, inside the atom is dependent on whether or not they're balanced and symmetrical, or whether they have an even or odd number. So, for example, odd number nuclei tend to be somewhat magnetic, where even number nuclei tend to be paramagnetic. And it depends on whether or not they have an even neutron balance as well, because the magnetic moments of the neutrons are technically variable. Even though they don't have a net external field, they still can flip, and they still have mass and momentum and angular velocity. So all those things are variables that add to this total complex equation.
Hey, one other thing I was wondering, I've seen this article around back in, I don't know, maybe 2008, that light turned out to have 300,000 times the magnetic field that we previously thought. And I just finally found an article that said 1,000,000 times the previous. I put the link in the chat there. That it was in
Yeah,
Wired.
Jeremy, maybe if you can find
I
that
was
link, we
wondering,
should probably
has there
look
been
at
any
that. I haven't
improvement?
seen this yet.
Yeah, I was wondering, have there been any improvements on solar panels or solar cells? Because it was saying that instead of going for the light portion of it, we should just treat it like any other radio frequency.
Oh, we should. I mean, I think people forget that solar panels are transistors that, or I should say, solar panels are MOSFETs that operate on the idea of
How are they MOSFETs?
band gaps. And a MOSFET requires a little bit of gate voltage to turn on a connection between its drain and its source pin. And in this case, they're just really, really fast, extremely thin MOSFETs that turn on and allow electron transport when a photon is absorbed. So they activate that interaction. But they're still just really, really, really fast switches. They operate at terahertz frequencies.
Okay,
But
so
they're
the
too high,
photon
too high of
that is creating a photon in the depletion zone? Is that
It's not creating a photon. It's converting a photon.
Or converting. That's
a reverse biased LED.
MIT proved that already. I mean, they were able to convert. MIT did a LED project where they were able to convert Brownian motion within the leads and the substrate of the LED into extra photonic output.
You're talking about the
efficiency at 200% or more.
efficient LED, aren't you?
Yeah, the super efficient LED, the one that's over 100%.
Yeah, that article's gone from the net now.
Oh, come on. No way, dude. We all knew about that. How could they possibly wipe that?
They wiped
I
it.
haven't been able to find that for a year now.
No way. If that's wiped, I'm going to really be surprised.
Yeah, it was the 233% efficient LED.
There's no way. They couldn't have pulled that down. That was big news.
Yep, it is gone. I'll try searching for it again, but I'm betting.
Come on, Jimmy, verify this. If they release secret sauce, they pulled it, I guess we know.
Damn.
What is the secret sauce for converting Brownian motion to photons?
Let's see. I'll put MIT at the front of it because it was in the MIT newsletter. Not by MIT, but let's see.
Oh, this is good.
I found something by a place called Inhabit, but let's see. The one that was originally from MIT.
Yeah, Jeremy, I agree with what Simon just said too. By the way, sorry to disrupt you, but make Simon a mod.
Make me a mod again.
They'll help destroy the bots way faster. Just mod those guys.
Yeah, let me see.
Here's the only link I could find that mentioned it.
Kill the bots, man. Bernie doesn't have a problem with bots anymore because he made everybody a mod. And it actually worked incredibly well.
How to do it?
It works really good.
It was a great idea, Bernie. It really was. It was like a social experiment that was tremendously successful, and now it's a model for what to do. As you've seen on my first live stream that totally failed, I made y'all a mod. You come on my channel, and if I know your name, you're a mod.
Right? And it's like then you can share and you can block the bots.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do that when I have the mod. I'm gonna have like that be like the top tier or whatever. I'm gonna have two, like, I don't know if I'm gonna have 2 or 3 tiers for the memberships, but I'm gonna have memberships set up soon.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Memberships will all be mods. That's a good call.
Yeah.
Not if bots choose to buy memberships because they figure it's profitable.
Hey, check us out. We need to have a way to view the people in the chat that are in the regular YouTube chat but the people in the stream, I noticed when you're in the stream, then people see the chat. But most of the time, once we're in the stream, it's like we don't notice the chat at all. And sometimes there's some really good questions in there.
Well, if you're in the stream, all you got to do is look on the right side of your panel. It defaults to private chat. Click the next one called comments, and you can actually see the live stream comments as you're watching the stream without having to have the window open.
Well, that shows oh, that's okay. I didn't see
the
that.
Downside is you cannot comment from the comment review section. You have to still have the stream open and pause the video so that you can go back there as your own username and comment.
I can always just keep, I've got like a second, the older
Yeah, you
tab.
can pause the video, get the audio and video from the live stream, and then just simply comment as yourself.
Jeremiah nailed it, because every once in a while I'll accidentally hit the chat button and then hit the back button and get kicked out completely. And that's not ever fun, but yeah.
Yep. Oh, hey, has that, the magnetic field of the photon being 1,000,000 times stronger, has that affected physics at all, or am I one of the few people that's ever noticed it?
Well, again, until we actually take a look at it and review the data that they're presenting, we won't know. But I haven't seen that yet, so I don't know, Anthony. We lost Anthony?
Yeah, he's not here anymore, huh?
Oh, he said too much. I don't think Anthony's ever gotten kicked off a stream before. That's weird. Oh, good. He's back.
They cut his mic.
I accidentally knocked myself off. I clicked on the wrong tab.
Oh, okay. It's your fault. Thank
All
you.
right, cool. We thought the Men in Black got you.
Don't hear
I
the
was joking
helicopters
about
yet.
it. I totally went there.
Now the audio went down to almost nothing again.
Can't mention that.
Oh shit! Sorry. The StreamYard program seems to turn the volume all the way down on the Chrome. That's what got me the first time I had Chrome. It was like as soon as I turned that on, I could barely hear anybody. But the volume control still said maximum. But if you go to the Windows tab, where it shows the volume control, it turns it down there.
Well,
I can never figure out how that got turned down before. I just happened to catch it this time.
At least you now know about this problem with the stream.
Yeah.
Kind of connected. I guess I'll mention that. I probably should mention this. Next month, I intend to replicate the microwave to sound interface for human participants.
Oh, okay. Isn't that like
what I'm talking about?
Microwave signal, I think.
Yeah, it's a, what do they call that?
Microwave hearing effect?
Yeah, exactly. I can't remember what the actual technical name of it is. But
yeah, there's another name for it, but...
it's called the Keep
Voice
Jeremiah
to Skull.
Alive.
Voice to Skull, that's what it is.
Voice to Skull, that's it.
Yeah, so I'll be producing that with the Magnetron, but I have to do some pretty heavy mods to the Magnetron. I've got to modify the magnetic field around the Magnetron with some extra added field coils, and I should be able to pretty easily vary those, and I can either do it one of two ways, and it can modulate the magnetic field by wrapping the magnets with an external field coil, or I can vary the voltage input to the Magnetron and change the acceleration velocity based on potential from the cathode to the anode, which is the outside chassis. But we should be able to produce Voice to Skull directly. I've already accidentally got that, where I could get the modulation frequencies in my power supplies that were producing those kinds of wavelengths, but I haven't actually
intentionally times over the safe power limit, though?
It doesn't take much, Anthony. It really doesn't take
That's
much.
what I'm saying, is I'm guessing just the average 600 watt is way too much power. So...
I'm not going to push anywhere near there. No, I'm going to run it
in a waveguide or one of the impact diodes or something. Grin diodes.
No, I'll probably run the Magnetron at a couple of watts. I don't think I need that much power.
Oh, can you run it real low like that? I thought it was pretty much on or off.
No, you need the cathode current. If you have the cathode current, then you have the hot cathode. You have the thoriated tungsten that's going to be emitting electrons, and that's all it needs to do. Once the electrons exit, the permanent magnetic field is going to still keep that set up, and then the external modulation field will allow you to enhance it or decrease it, which changes the frequency output. And the only catch there is the frequency output is dynamic, meaning it depends on the length of the antenna that's hooked up to the magnetron. And in the case of a microwave magnetron, it's that little metallic thing sticking up off that pink ceramic insulator on the top side. That's the back side. So there's your filtering inductors for DC. But on the top side, you have this ceramic insulator sticking out. You see that? Go ahead, pick up one image, Jimmy. Just go show that ceramic insulator with that little like cylinder on the top, that metallic cylinder that sticks inside.
I did a report on magnetrons in college, and I never seen these images. Of course, that was back before the internet.
Well, then you never cut one apart.
Huh?
You never cut one apart with an angle grinder. That's where you see what's really inside of them and expose yourself to also toxic chemicals to do it outside with the face mask on.
And then beryllium, isn't it?
Beryllium and even mercury in some cases.
Oh, really? I just remember how they used to measure the power by bank of car headlights.
So people don't really see that metal cone on the top of the magnetron, not that image. Jeremy, just pick one of a fully assembled magnetron and we'll see
Can
it.
you point with it at a mouse of what you're talking about?
There we go. Okay, so you see that, yeah, the one that he was just looking at. You see that metal part on top of that very short ceramic ring?
Pinkish color thing?
Yeah, that pink solid thing. That pink solid thing is a high-temperature ceramic insulator. That metal part on top is the antenna. It's a very short wavelength antenna, but the distance from that, there's a wire in the center of that thing, and it goes down into the magnetron cavity and picks up the electron ring.
I thought it was a waveguide, and it was just the radio frequency was only on the inside surface of the hole.
It's a lot more complicated than that, I hate to say. But yeah, coming out of that metallic part that's at the left of the image we're looking at right now, that metallic part doesn't produce electromagnetic waves. It produces electric field changes. The electric field on that part goes from high to low, and it cyclically does that in a sinusoidal waveform because of the way that the magnetron is assembled. And that is put into a waveguide. That metallic part right there at the tip, that radiates into the waveguide, and that waveguide then carries the scalar emissions, which are electric potentials, and it carries them at 90 degrees so that they become electromagnetic potentials, aka transverse waves, and then those get injected into the microwave cavity of your microwave oven. They go through a mica plate and then pass into the rest of the cavity where they reflect around. Now, the key
so how are you going to how are you going to modulate the microwaves? I mean, how much voltage you can get a little signal out of it?
Yeah, so the magnetron has two magnets on it. It has one right above the resonant cavity and one right below. If you take a look at a perfect side profile, looking through the heat sinks, you'll be able to clearly see the magnet on the top and bottom. If you wrap there we go. So see the magnet on the left and right there? If you wrap coils around those magnets, or you simply remove them completely and replace them with copper coils and apply a DC current, you can now vary the amplitude and the frequency output of that very incredible device, which can completely sustain a ridiculously large backfeed, or SWR. That thing can handle basically a direct radio short. You can't short it electrically, but if you radio-wise reflect it back on itself, the SWR can handle it. It's not going to fry because it's just a couple of components. There's nothing.
Is the SWR when all the signal gets reflected back at it?
Right, standing wave reflecting. So a magnetron is a device optimized to handle extraordinarily large values of standing wave reflectance. And you can easily modify it with adding your own field coils to change its frequency. And then if you pump an audio frequency into those field coils, now you've got voice to skull.
Yeah, let's say you powered the filament up and stuck 50 volts on it. Would you actually get anything out then?
The filament requires 4 volts at 10 amps, about 40 watts.
Right.
So the filament, increasing the filament will only burn it out. You don't want to do that. You want to keep the filament at a steady state. 4 amps at, 10 amps at 4 volts or whatever it requires. Each magnetron is a little bit different, but it's generally a very high current at a much lower voltage than the amount of current it handles. You want to vary your electric field going into it, so the potential between the cathode and the anode, or you want to vary the magnetic field that controls the circulating current for the electron beam. Either of those will produce the voice-to-skull effect. They will allow you to modulate or produce audio frequencies in either plasma or directly by receiving and vibration of water molecules.
So let's say you just wanted to get 1 watt out, like what you were talking about. Not even modulating it, but just to get any output. How much voltage would you need for it to even start?
It tends to, well, if the cathode current is maximized, you tend to start to get electron emission as little as 50 volts. But the emission is so small that you won't much see it. It takes reaching approximately 200 or 300 volts before you can get significant outputs, and after that, you've really got good emission thresholds. And now it's gonna be logarithmic all the way up. So you'll get a maximum.
It's like LED to where it doesn't put out much until you get a certain breakdown, and then you can modulate from there up.
Right. It starts out below 0. It does have a threshold, a minimum bias voltage. Once that's reached, it goes up logarithmically to a maximum, very much like a BH curve on an inductive material or a magnetic material, and then it reaches a maximum where the voltage doesn't increase anymore, but the current increases input to that thing, and you get more and more power output, but technically the voltage isn't changing, you're just getting more current flowing through it, and it does create a higher electromagnetic amplitude. They're very nonlinear devices, these things.
I know I've seen somewhere that the regular magnetron, I was looking at the data sheet just for, I think it was 1,000-watt magnetron, and something like a 50 microsecond pulse could take something like 60 kilowatt pulse of power out.
I've put at least that into those things, and they've sustained it just fine. Magnetrons are probably the most robust too.
In the dark, it was still getting us just a strong RF output.
Yeah. As far as radio frequency tubes, magnetrons are probably one of the most robust tubes any person can get their hands on. They are incredibly resilient. You can beat the crap out of them, and they don't care. I mean, if you wanted to play around with radio tubes, these things are fantastic because they're mini Klystrons. They're excellent. Just they'll fry you. You know, they'll fry you if you don't know what you're doing. So that's the only problem.
Oh, I didn't learn. I don't remember shit about tubes.
I didn't either until I finally built a tube amp, and then it was all real easy.
Yeah, we're still on YouTube, aren't we? Oh, well.
Yeah, we're live.
Sorry. I forgot about language. Sorry. Didn't know if that mattered, but just in case.
This looks like the one that Mark bought.
Yeah, that thing was a beast, man.
Hey guys, I just wanted to say thanks for letting me on the show. I've got to go, and I appreciate all your hospitality and letting me just hang out. See you guys.
Yeah, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, I'm sorry I talked too much, man. I wish I would have had a chance. If you want to say something now, maybe we should all shut up and just let you get your point out.
Yeah, please.
It's all good, man. I'm afraid it wouldn't make any sense. I think I've drank a little too much. So have a good night, guys.
I like Jeremiah, you never talk too much. I'm just going to quickly say I'm also going. Jeremy, I'm going to have to show you another stream, Social Blades, where it literally shows that you were robbed of 3.5 million views this summer, as well as that there was 1 month you should have gained 9,000 subscribers, several other months that you gained several thousand, yet your YouTube has stayed at a consecutive 109,000 despite gaining tens of thousands over the summer.
Yeah, I've been working hard, man. We've been reaching a lot of people, and I know that there's more people like coming on all the time, and then I find people that are like continuously like, dude, I subscribed to your channel, and then I don't know what happened, and like I couldn't find you again.
I've been unsubbed like 3 or 4 times from you at least.
I heard people like, oh, tell me like 3 months later they found me again, and it's only because they.
Is it true that all of Edgar Fouché's channel is just completely gone? Do we know what happened with that? I know Dan would probably know, but I'm sure you would too, Jeremy. Did Ed's just channel disappear?
Yeah, well, they redid everything. We couldn't get into his old email because we were trying to save it. You had to get into the email and be able to like verify the emails for the channels, and like when YouTube
Ed's still alive? Is he still alive?
No, Ed passed away.
Okay, that's what I thought. Oh, hey, he was looking that up on there. There were several times where you've had like 10,000 videos unwatched, which is a pretty good trick.
Yeah.
Where just outright shows a negative view count several times.
Yeah, I love how you can have negative numbers of views.
I like to know how you can unwatch something. That's a new trick.
Yeah, somebody tell me how to do that. I'd like to unwatch some things in my life for sure.
And clearly we have an
Yeah, get your time
infestation
back.
of time travelers or something. I mean, but yeah, the statistics speak for themselves. It's blatantly terrible.
Well, dude, it's because we're like talking about stuff that's probably like borderline classified, or you know, like a lot of it's recently declassified or unclassified, but some of it's still like related to classified programs. We're just not like outright talking about the programs and like the actual stuff. We're just talking about all the scientists and their work, and still that's.
What they say, a lot of times it's cheaper just to not classify it, but just keep it in obscurity.
Yeah, security by obscurity, and that's where we're breaking that down. We're making
yeah.
That was a great comment.
Michael Mitresky, did I say that right? Michael Mitresky? Psychic, I am thinking of a word. I am imagining the word in its 6 letters in my mind right now.
Secret.
And can you detect it? I'm now putting an image in my mind of what that word looks like in the physical world. Can you tell what that 6-letter word is?
But I don't know if that's right. Unless this is one of those tricks that show you a subliminal picture.
Psychic does not mean remote viewer, and it doesn't mean being able to interpret words. Of course, that's not like a defining characteristic, but I'm just curious. I mean, these are fun tests to run, just like the dice test that you used to run, Jeremy, which should probably be a part of every single show.
Did you ever see that guy, Darren Brown? It's in England or the UK, where he does some amazing things.
It is not potato, it is not magnet, and it is not coffee. I am sorry.
I love Darren Brown.
Those are all appropriate 6-letter words, but it's not any of those.
Hey, have you seen Darren Brown? It's like DERREN Brown.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, I don't know how he does a lot of the things, but he shows how he does a lot, but it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Yo. All right.
I wondered if some of the stuff isn't set up ahead. That's not really what he says it is, but no matter how he does it, that was pretty impressive.
Let's see who we can guess the number between. Who wants to guess the number? 1 and 100.
87.
0 to 100. 0 to 99. Well, yeah, 1 to 100. 1 to 100.
I'll stick to 87.
87. All right.
13.
48. I know I'm wrong already.
69?
I already know.
I would have thought somebody would have picked 69.
Oh, it's the most unlucky number there is.
Double zeros?
13.
13.
Oh, looks like 103.
10 and a 3. 10 plus 3 is 13.
Oh, you had him. Okay.
Guess who fucking called that shit, bitches?
Who is that?
That was me. I'm sorry. I gotta quit drinking.
Did you call
I
it?
didn't hear you.
Did you call 13?
Yeah, I put it in the chat. Or I said it out loud. I did.
think I better look at this. Let me look.
I really did. No, you can rewind it. I'm
looking in the chat right now. I'm looking for 13.
It's not in the chat. It was verbally sent and with my face in it. I said 13.
Dude, I swear, I see it now. It like showed up late. I don't know.
Yeah, same here.
I didn't hear it though. Did anybody else hear him say that?
No.
I didn't see it, but I didn't hear him. I don't know.
I said it. It's all good.
Dude, that's weird.
We'll listen back on the playback. We'll find it, but I wasn't paying attention. There was a lot going on.
If you did, I've got my new remote viewer. I've been looking for one of y'all to answer a couple of questions.
It was a lucky guess. Sorry,
Simon
guys.
Simon says you said it.
He
says he said it. He heard you. So I guess we didn't hear you somehow, but he heard you.
Yeah, too much going on. But yeah, damn. Wow, that's pretty good, dude. All right. Well,
you're at it. Your bro's lottery number.
Okay, we're going to talk now.
We can do 2. No, I'm just
Dude, do it again. Do it again.
Do it again? All right,
do it again. Why not? If somebody actually got it, do it again.
right in the chat. All right, I actually
Okay.
got it. All right, I'm gonna guess 50.
I'm taking 73 and I'm putting it in chat now. Put your things in chat. 73 for
I'm
me.
thinking 26.
All right, let's see. Put it in chat right now. Wow.
Where'd the other one go? Is that a 6 or a 9?
That's a 9. 19. 19.
Who's closest? Who's closest?
Whoa, YouTube must be a good deal behind.
17.
Nice on YouTube.
I want to hear Jeremy's thoughts on Ken Wheeler's ideas as well, if you don't mind. I think Ken, he doesn't know enough about the literature. I don't think he reads enough of the literature. He denounces all like Einstein outright and a lot of the literature, but I just don't ever see him doing tensor calculus or showing that he really understands GR or any of the theories that he's attempting to denounce or disprove.
I can answer Kurt's question on
Is
that
that the
too.
guy that has a ton of
Ken
tattoos
Wheeler.
on him?
Yeah, go ahead. Your thoughts on Ken Wheeler.
I've been asked a lot about Ken Wheeler. It seems like
I can't get into the guy. I've tried to watch him, and I'm just like,
his name comes up so often. It's
I know.
become a rather annoying point. And so I'll say it this way. I personally have some major issues with Wheeler. And they stem from his extraordinary arrogance and narcissistic behavior. Would I talk to Ken Wheeler? I suppose I would stress myself to take the time, but Ken takes people's ideas that are genuinely valid, like Eric Dollar's and others. He puts them into his own words, and he tries to use the most complicated, long, structured sentences in order to explain them. And the reason for why he does this, I don't want to speculate on. I have my own opinions on it, but Ken Wheeler is not, as far as I have seen, capable of presenting brand new information that we haven't otherwise seen from other sources. So if you look at his channel as a news reporting channel and ignore the fact that he says he's the only person in the world that's done X, Y, and Z, just know that that comes from somewhere else, and then you've got the basic profile. There is useful stuff there, but the guy's personality I just can't get down with, you know?
This is the guy that's like covered in tattoos, right?
Yeah, that's the guy.
Okay.
Again, I can't say anything about him as a person. I've never met him, never talked to him, never emailed him, never communicated with him. I cannot say anything about his personality. What I can say is that the most important and accurate points that he has ever presented come from other people, and the ones that he's personally came up with tend to be very inaccurate, very overly complicated, and to the extent where they are no longer valid.
He seems to love using the longest words possible.
He really does love that.
And the other thing, what I want to say. All right, so
Ken Wheeler needs to do more than pouring bismuth into an aluminum can, which of course destroys the bismuth because aluminum and bismuth instantly amalgam at melting temperature of bismuth. So that instantly kills your bismuth properties right there. Stupid idea. But beyond that point, I haven't really seen much experimentation out of him other than building his own little magnetic viewing films, which took me about all of 15 minutes and some iron filings and proper acid, dissolved them with a silicone oil. But yeah, long story short, there's not a whole lot there beyond what you can find far better on other smaller channels.
Yeah, I know. He gets a ton of attention and popularity. It's kind of, I don't get it. But
hey, does anybody know about the liquid metal? I want to say heat sink, but that's not the right thing. The heat sink compound. There's liquid metal on it, but supposedly they've used like some amalgam or something that is not supposed to react and eat away the copper or the heat sink. Anybody
You're not
familiar
talking
with that?
about like heat sink, you're not talking about like heat sink coupling materials such as
Thermal heat sinks,
like
silver oxide.
Yeah, so just by adding metal particles and something that's generally not that thermally conductive, when you compress it down and squeeze out all of the lower thickness materials, and you end up with these metal particles. They'll get compressed because they're fairly small surface area,
Right.
and you
This
end up with a
had
direct
like
metal to
record
metal
numbers
surface.
for the heat sink compound. It's something like $30-something for a tiny little tube.
Yeah, you've got like Arctic Silver is a brand that people probably have heard of. Arctic
Yeah,
Silver is going
it's
through a
way
series
better than
of
Arctic Silver.
If you wanted to see probably one of the best heatsink compound independent verifications is Tech Ingredients, where he's made his own using diamond and using other
I've seen
materials.
that.
Tech Ingredients is the place to go if you want to understand the flaws and the benefits of heatsink compounds.
Whatever it is, it resembled mercury, and they were saying it was something like one of these very low temperature metals similar to mercury or one of the others. But they
Gallium?
said the problem was they normally
Gallium, probably, you're thinking, right?
What's that?
Gallium? Gallium melts in your hand. Gallium is a low temperature liquid
somehow
metal.
they made it to where it was no longer reactive, to where it no longer ate the heat sink or the copper. But it just conducted heat better than anything else.
Well, amazingly, I mean, that's correct. Yeah,
Aquanaut,
Gallium
something
sand
like
is another
that.
great option where it's already neutralized. But you can technically take a very, very tiny amount of gallium. If you've got the right amount, gallium nanoparticles, you can make gallium amalgam with a copper heatsink and connect them together physically directly through a metal connection point just by reaching that thermal melting temperature. So if you heat the heat sink up beyond the, 98 degrees Fahrenheit for gallium melting point, you'll get a direct metal-to-metal amalgamation connection, and the gallium can only penetrate so deep, so it won't actually affect the processor's operation or the thing that needs to be cooled. And it does do incredibly well. It's the solution that they use on all kinds of aerospace applications. And Gallenstein is a balanced
minus tech tips, where they called it liquid metal. But I guess before the problem was that, yeah, it worked, but you give it a year, even when it's supposedly inert, and it still like will eat a hole through what you had. Oh, here it is, Cryonaut, Kryonaut.
All right, this is going to be an awesome video.
It's by Thermal Grizzly.
I think that's the same stuff they use in stuff they call airplane stripper or something along those lines. You can dump it on a hood of a car and it'll literally eat through the hood.
Yeah, totally.
Well, yes, but this supposedly doesn't eat the metal.
Thank you, Kurt, again. And again, check out Nathan Innen's work on the whole pointing vector derivation and going through the maths of that gem theory stuff and showing how, how it really works with gauge invariance and all the variables in GR. That's an interesting one. And then also check out this Unlocking Zero Point by Garrett Modell for some of the more interesting stuff on zero point energy. I'm going to be doing a whole month or two on energy technologies and just all this idea of the 0 point energy. Free energy, I'll be doing the wind conference tomorrow and Wednesday, and then and then I'm getting into all different other types of energy technologies and stuff. We'll be diving into and stuff. So, yeah, thank you again for joining. Yeah, the gem theory again. He goes Nathan Innen's overview of all that is really good, but that's where a lot of this stuff comes from. It's this whole analog of gravito-electromagnetism to electromagnetism, and that treating gravity like an electromagnetic field theory similar to electromagnetism, and these other parts that you can pull out of like Gravity Probe B, for example. NASA did that whole test to see the frame dragging effect of Earth as it moved through space, or this.
Speaking of energy, I should also mention, I think it's, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Barbosa and Leal. They have a couple of different papers and I think a patent as well for a ground pumping or electron pumping field generator that utilizes a very fundamental property identified in Richard Van Durick's work but optimized for energy production in their work. You have Aguinha. I'm not even going to try to attempt how to connect everybody.
Can you post the links to the paper or a citing from me to like? I'd like to link to those authors.
If my computer wasn't choking right now, I would. But
yeah.
I suppose I'll just cover the basic part. Let me say this first, though. If anybody here in the audience watching today has not seen Theories of Everything with Kurt Jamungle, you need to go on that channel, subscribe to it. You need to watch those videos. He has a particular talent in finding very important presenters with critical data related to this kind of research. If you want to build your own flying saucer, if you want to build your own alternative propulsion craft or exotic technology craft, you've got to watch this guy's videos. Seriously.
Oh, okay, yeah. Kurt, I have no idea how to say his last name, but I think
if you ain't subbed, sub.
Yeah, he's got some really great guests. Since I
guess
not all of them are straight physics. Some of them he deals with consciousness, and then some are strict, him just trying to understand more about the UFO and UAP phenomenon in general and stuff. But those are some good interviews, and they're very revealing and give some good insights on these players, man. He's really good at it, man. And thank you for the offer. Yeah, if you're ever in Boston or Rhode Island, let us know for sure. Or New Jersey, we can give you a view of the lab and Mark's lab. Anyway, we've got a couple different other people working with their own labs, and I want to get down there to Mark's lab because he's got a lot of manufacturing capabilities there, and also the high-speed camera now that we want to take advantage of and do some experiments, some stuff. So that would be quite awesome.
Does anyone have an ultraviolet camera?
I do.
How can you even get one? Because I tried to find them and I didn't.
You have to make it yourself. I had to remove all of the filtering from my DSLR camera in order to produce that output. But the ultraviolet range is not where it needs to be. It doesn't go down to the below 100 nanometers range that I need to see. And that's just the common limitation of CCDs.
Wow.
Oh, so you're going really...
I'm going to ionization thresholds.
Really
we
strong.
Get down below the 200 nanometers range if we want to actually see emission from light that will produce ionization and atmospheric nitrogen.
Everyone
233 ionizes the air, doesn't it?
It again depends on the wavelength. You have to have sufficient energy in the photon in order to ionize the air, and that happens for nitrogen between 100 and 200 nanometers range. There is actually another harmonic in the 300 nanometers range, but again, they're decreasing amplitude harmonics, so you don't get the same effect for the same amount of power input. If you get down below the 200 nanometers range, you can directly couple with the electron valence on the outside shell of the nitrogen or N2 molecule, and then you can easily ionize it, but you do need that really short wavelength.
I got some bulbs I got an old E-Prom eraser, and I got some for making sterilizing from eBay.
Good. The sterilizing bulb should be good.
But man, I only looked at it for like maybe 3 seconds, and I had that, and I was being really careful, and for barely like 3 seconds, just with a glint of, just barely, I had that, whatever they call it, where it burns your eye for like a good day.
Yeah, you had welder's flash. You got welder's flash for 3 seconds of exposure to a UVC lamp?
Yep.
Yeah, I know all about that, Anthony. I had the same thing.
What's that?
I blasted myself pretty hard, and it was very uncomfortable for over 2 days.
Yeah, mine wasn't like extreme soreness, but there was definitely like that sandpaper feel that wasn't comfortable.
Yeah, your eyes are bloodshot. It looks like you've been smoking up all day, but you haven't done anything. You're just basically laying in bed like, I can't open my eyes because they burn every single time I think about it. It takes a while to get over. Welder's flash sucks, and UV will get right in there, especially for those lamps. But if you intentionally bump 500 watts into one of those lamps in order to create exotic vacuum objects on the cathode, well, you've got a whole different level of problem.
It surprised me. You seen that ozone machine I've got? The ozone in there, even like looking at it, having blown in your face? Didn't seem to bother my eyes. I would have thought that would have been like, you know, throwing alcohol in your eyes or something like that. But it's like when I had it running in my house for like a couple of hours, after being in the house for like a minute, I could tell the difference. But just from the machine, just for like a few seconds or, 20, 30 seconds, didn't notice a difference.
Photonic absorption is way more damaging immediately than
I
exposure
was thinking
to
the
ozone.
itself.
And
This was from the ozone generator. I was thinking the ozone itself would have like really hurt my eyes.
no, the ozone's not going to produce photons, unfortunately, unless it's ionized ozone. And those ozone generators don't tend to produce ionized ozone. They just tend to produce ozone.
I thought
All right.
ozone was
I
ionized.
gotta get going. I gotta get up in a couple hours.
Hey guys, put on the after show, Jeremy. I'm gonna step out for about 2 minutes, and I'll be right back. I'll be here for the after show. If anybody has questions for me, feel free to post that link. If y'all want to talk about the Michaels and Morley interferometer, yes, I have done those experiments, both of them, and we can talk about that. Anybody that wants to join and ask me questions, wait 2 minutes, join the StreamYard, and I will talk to you in a bit. And
I'll be
thanks,
here.
Jeremy. Great stream again. And Kurt Jamungo, awesome. Glad to have you. We had a
Hey,
lot of
Jeremy
great
and Jeremiah, thank you so much for all you guys do. It's just incredible.
Yeah,
and
really.
thank you guys for carrying this on.
I second that comment from whoever that was. Thank you.
Good physics questions as always, Kurt, and thank you for joining in. It's always a pleasure to have you in the live chat. So
Hey, definitely need to check out that
Be right back.
where the light had 1 million times the magnetic field of the photons that were expected too. That's got to make a difference in physics, I would think.
all right, guys, I'm ending it here. Join up the live stream. Join up the after party and ask us
Okay. I
questions.
will be right back in 1 minute. Won't take a leak.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.